Brains. Brains. Num 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 num.
The next video up in my Alien franchise review vlog type thing is Aliens from 1986, directed by James Cameron, who would go on to make such huge blockbusters as Terminator 2, Judgment Day rather, Avatar and Titanic. Aliens is a science fiction horror film which takes place after the original 1979 film Alien. Now, spoiler alert for the original Alien film. At the end of Alien, we have a character called Ripley, who is the only surviving member of the mining ship Nostromo. Aliens begins with a shot of space where this lonely life pod is travelling through the bleakness of it all as it's discovered by a salvage crew. Now, Ripley has been in hypersleep, and because of that, she's actually been hypersleep for a lot longer than she actually intended. I think it's something like 57 years. And in that time, you know, everyone she knows is probably dead, and you know, her daughter is gone, and she has to adjust to life in ostensibly for her the future. Now, what happens is that Ripley is hauled up in front of a tribunal. You see, in the first film, Ripley blows up this huge mining refinery worth trillions and trillions of dollars to try and kill this alien creature that had managed to get board on her ship and kill all of the crew. So Ripley is then asked by the company that she worked for, Weyland-Yutani, why did she blow it up? And she tries to say to them, well, we were woken up out of hyperspace on their orders, on company orders, to then investigate a distress signal coming from an uncharted planet. They went there and this alien life form attacked them. They then had tried to blow up the refinery and escape in the life pod to try and kill the creature. So the people who are representing the company basically tell it's a lot of nonsense, you know, there's never been any alien life form discovered before like this, and because of this they actually demote her down to basically like a sort of warehouse hand, where she's just working on these power loaders, which are like futuristic forklift trucks, and moving cargo around. So she's no longer an officer. So on top of dealing with the fact that, you know, she's lost her family, she's went through this incredibly traumatic and frightening experience, it's 57 years in the future. She's also got to deal with the fact that she now no longer has the status or the job that she once had. So that seems to be case closed. But what actually happens is that the company tell Ripley that the reason they don't believe that her story is because there has been a terraforming colony on this planet LV-426 trying to change the atmosphere into a breathable one so that people can go and live there in the future. And they tell her, you know, look, there's a couple of hundred people there, you know, their whole family's there, and they've never experienced anything like that, so you're probably talking nonsense. So Ripley then is sort of racked with, I think, guilt and fear and just trauma from her previous experience. You see her sort of waking up all the time out of nightmares and stuff like that. And she eventually is contacted by a guy called Burke, who is a representative of the company, who comes to her where she lives with a marine commander, who basically informs her that the colony has ceased transmission. They've lost contact with them. It's probably just an antenna malfunction, but they're going to send a marine group out to the colony to investigate in case they've come into contact with this alien life form. So Ripley then eventually agrees to go with them as a sort of advisor because she's experienced it before. So we then see the film play out as we're introduced to these colonial marines and all these different characters, you know, the very sort of like macho and even the women, especially the women, and the film is then about them going to this to LV-426 and trying to investigate what's happened. When they arrive there, they find that the colony seems to be deserted. There seems to be evidence, however, of barricades being made and some small arms fire, and this then leads the colonial marines to going into the bowels of this terraforming huge massive structure and making a very, very gruesome discovery about the colonists. I don't want to ruin the rest of it, but basically what happens is the Marines end up stranded there, and it's all out war. I mean, that was the tagline for this film. This time it's war, all out war with this alien species, and that's what the film's kind of about. So, a couple of minor spoilers in there, but really that's the setup. So you'll if you've never watched it, you're in for an absolute treat. It's an absolute classic film. What's interesting about Aliens is that while it can be seen as a science fiction horror film, they took a very different approach to it, and I think that can really be brought down to James Cameron. If you look at the other sequel that he made, Terminator 2, he did the same thing. He created the Terminator, which was this sort of very personal, claustrophobic, essentially a horror film, and then in the second film, Terminator 2, it was more of a sort of big budget action flick, and that's essentially what he did with Aliens. Alien was a terrifying, and I still maintain it's one of the most frightening films ever made, a terrifying haunted house in space sort of film, and he took the idea of this, this really unstoppable alien creature and made a colony of them. Said, well, what happens if they meet an entire hive of these things and there's Marines there, and it becomes like a sort of action combat movie, and that's essentially what Aliens is. It was a really brave move to make because Alien is an absolute masterpiece, and because of that you would often see with sequels that people try to just retread the original in some way, and they'll maybe take sort of small baby steps away from it, try to add to the sort of mythos of the franchise. But here what we see is a massive step away, not just in terms of content, but the actual genre that the film is in itself. This film is far from, light-hearted. I mean, there are comedy moments in the film, but, it's I'm not saying, because it's no longer sort of horror-orientated as much, that it's quite sort of light, it's not. It's just that it's an adrenaline ride, and in fact, if there's any film out there that you want to really talk about being a sort of adrenaline film, Aliens is it. One of the first things that stands out when you're watching the film is the special effects. Much like the original film, which had incredible special effects for the time, Aliens has wonderful production values, and the sets and the wardrobe as well that all the Marines are wearing, things like that, are all fantastic. The alien creature itself in the second film, the special effects used, the alien design, it's slightly different. They have changed it. What a lot of people don't realise when they watch the original film, because you can't actually see it as well, is that the top of the alien head is actually kind of translucent in a way, and you can actually see that there's like a sort of skull-like structure underneath. Well, for James Cameron's Aliens, they actually kind of took that away, and you see the ridges of what was kind of underneath. You kind of see what was there. So they've changed the alien design slightly, but I don't have a massive problem with that. One of the most memorable things to do with the special effects are the props used in the film. When we see the armaments used by the colonial Marines, that's basically informed, any sort of combat action futuristic film that's came after Aliens. You're always going back to that template of, what they achieved in Aliens, the sort of smart guns that they use, the pulse rifle especially, and the soundscapes they use for those weapons are so distinctive that as soon as you hear it, you know where it comes from, and it's a really great melding of fantastic props and wonderful sounds to sell those props to the audience. Talking about the soundscape of the film, it's interesting that James Horner, who did the score for Aliens, felt that he had really been done a disservice, because they were still cutting the film when they were asking him to score it, which, as a musician and someone who has kind of, roughly scored some small projects himself, I can tell you that that would be a nightmare, having to actually write all of these musical cues for something where the film is still being altered very, very quickly. So eventually there's actually a fallout between James Horner and James Cameron, which is interesting because eventually they worked together again on Titanic. The sort of wounds healed and they sort of got on with it eventually. But the score that he actually delivered, I don't know why I went all high pitched there. The score that he actually delivered is phenomenal, and the score that he used in the conclusion of the film is one that you, and especially in the 1980s, you used to see it in loads of trailers. You still see it in trailers sometimes. It's this piece of music that's used to sort of infer just like an absolutely epic moment is happening. So I think the music he provided also went into some really subtle moments. I think the end score when the credits roll is actually a really poignant one and sells the loneliness of space in a lot of ways. The actors are phenomenal. We've got Sigourney Weaver reprising her role as Ripley, and what's interesting here is that in the original film, what makes it special is that you don't know who's going to survive. There's no real main character. It's just sort of who survives, and that's the way it is. Ripley, they didn't expand the characters in the first film, but in the second film we really have the feeling of this woman that's, lost. She's lost her family, she's lost everything. And Sigourney Weaver plays it really, really well. And there's a change that happens within the film where she goes from being, in some ways, passive to being overtly assertive and aggressive, as only a mother could be, So it's interesting when we see that change in her character, and she plays it all really, really well. Maybe our best performance, I don't know if it's our best performance, but it's right up there. It's a fantastic performance. We also have people like Michael Biehn, who plays Hicks, who's a colonial marine. He was actually brought in at the last minute because the actor that was playing the Hicks role was fired after a few days of shooting. Apparently, since then, that actor's then went on to say that it was drug related, but that was never really said at the time. You've got Hicks, you've got Bill Paxton, who probably plays the most memorable character in the film, as Hudson. He's the sort of wisecracking marine who then goes through this interesting little arc where he loses the confidence and bravado that you see from marines. That sort of kill them all, let God sort them out attitude. All of a sudden, when he's presented with this alien creature, something completely overwhelming, it changes. He changes, his character changes, but then he redeems himself, which is one of the best parts of the film. We also have Lance Henriksen as Bishop, who interestingly was going to be there was the original choice to play the Terminator. It would have been a completely different franchise, a completely different film, because he's a very slight guy compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, who isn't? And Lance Henriksen's performance as Bishop is really, really subtle. And he does sort of play Bishop as like a sort of child, and he said that himself. But there's a sort of creepiness to his performance as well, where you are thinking, I'm looking at a piece of technology that's sentient. What's it really thinking? And in many ways, it's an extension of the HAL character in 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's this sort of vacant sound to the voice at times, and you're sort of in that. There's a worry. What are they really thinking about? But he plays his part excellently. And, the whole cast are great from start to finish. No one is weak in this film. Paul Reiser, I think Reiser. He actually does a great job as well in his character of Burke, but I don't want to really expand upon that in this part of this video because this is the spoiler-free section. We're coming to the spoiler section in a second, but he does really good performance. Carrie Henn that plays Newt as well, fantastic performance. And Jeanette Goldstein, I apologise if I get her name wrong, who plays Vasquez. I mean, she's one of the most memorable characters in the film, and she went on to actually become one of James Cameron's sort of favourites because she's been in, she had a few bit parts in other James Cameron films, but her performance as the very physically dominating woman. I'm doing this when I say dominating woman, I really shouldn't. Freudian slip. This, really physically dominating woman. Her performance is really memorable and absolutely fantastic. So all in all, the cast are brilliant. Above all else, the strongest aspect of this film, in my opinion, is the script. The direction by James Cameron is fantastic. It's really great. The structure of the film takes a similar structure to the original film where there are 4 acts instead of just 3. I think the editing of the film is really tight, and they never linger too much on the action, but neither did they linger too little. In fact, it gets it just right. Unfortunately, more modern action films linger far too little on the action. They just don't get it right. It's just you can hardly see what's going on in a lot of ways. Are you listening, Michael Bay? Are you listening? I think that James Cameron's direction is fantastic, but he wrote the script, and he wrote the script while he was waiting on Arnold Schwarzenegger to do Terminator, because he'd cast Arnold Schwarzenegger to be in the Terminator, and then the option was picked up on him. He'd already signed a contract that if Conan the Barbarian was successful, he would have to do a sequel, so he had to do that. So the Terminator was put back for I think 9 months or something like that while they filmed Conan the Destroyer, the sequel to Conan the Barbarian. And in that time, while they were doing pre-production for the Terminator and just waiting on Arnold Schwarzenegger being free, James Cameron worked on the script. And then the producers, they were really blown away by the script, and rightly they should have been. I mean, it's a fantastic script. It takes everything that was great about the first film, but it doesn't try to retread it. It goes on its own way. It tries to expand the character of Ripley. It does something that sequels should always learn by, which is that don't try to do anything that will infer badly on the original film, like try to explain something else that happened in the original film, which then makes you retcon the entire thing and can often really affect it badly. Aliens doesn't do that, but it does go out on its own. Brilliant script, absolutely wonderful. Okay, so we're at that point where that's me done my sort of review of it. Definitely go and check it out. It's one of the best sort of action science fiction films ever made, and one of the best sequels ever made as well. Go and check it out. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the short analysis part of the video where I'm going to talk about what I think of what the film means, that sort of pretentious stuff, and it's going to be a major spoiler, so if you haven't watched Aliens, go and watch it and then come back and watch this part of the video. Okay, so major spoilers. One of the biggest debates about Aliens thematically is its treatment of women. Now, at first glance it appears as if Aliens is very much pro-female, that it has a feminist thread running through it. However, there are people that point out that although Ripley is this incredibly positive character and a strong female lead, that a lot of the issues that are in the film come from the fear of femininity as well, such as the Vasquez character, who is, while she's made to be physically strong, she's not really developed in a sort of womanly way, I suppose you would say. And some people argue that, you know, on top of that, you have the you have the fact that Vasquez is trying to be like the women, like the men, rather than just being a strong woman and not worrying what the men think or caring about them. It's as if she's trying to fit in with them in some ways, and some feminist thinkers haven't liked that, which I find strange. But anyway, and there's other theories as well about how, you know, you've also got, you know, the ultimate baddie of the film is this alien female, you know, the alien queen, who tries to who is some sort of danger to children, you know, and leads children astray, you know, that sort of idea, you know, which again I don't think that's in the film or at all, but there are people that have written essays on it. I think with regards to the feministic attitude, yes, there are some people who criticise it because they say that, you know, Ripley is motivated by the need to be a mother, to fulfil her female job, if, so to speak, right? And that's what a lot of people feel about the film, is they feel that, you know, it's as if, oh, a female must be a mother, that's the only way she can be complete. And she has this relationship with Newt, and Newt even calls her, you know, like mummy at one point, and, you know, that's the sort of relationship that they have, and that is actually a negative thing, because you know, women should aspire to be more than just what their biology is, you know. I don't see any of that in the film at all. I think it's, you know, I always like to put forward like the different ideas, but, you know, my view on it is that Ripley is an incredibly strong woman who goes through a brilliant character arc, and she has a really great story, and she's assertive. She has been through great tragedy, but in the end she gets that family unit back, which is what she always wanted. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of in that, and I don't think it's a woman's job. I don't think it's not a woman's job. You know, I just don't think that's in the film. I don't think that's what James Cameron was thinking about when he was writing it. Not that I can read his mind, but I just don't see that in there. I think that if there is any aspect of feminism in the film, it's showing that you know, a woman can be just as strong as anyone else, and I think that's an incredibly positive thing. And there aren't many, you know, Sigourney Weaver said herself that she was afraid that someone else would write Ripley as a lot of people write women, which is sort of try to make her too tough, you know, in a sort of fake, contrived way. But instead, James Cameron gave her this multi-layered character, which, and he said himself, he was guided by Sigourney Weaver when he was writing the screenplay, that he was, you know, listening to what she thought about what, you know, Ripley would do in certain situations, what she would feel, things like that. So yeah, I think it's a positive view of women, and I think these other arguments against the film are as pretty clutching for straws, I think. One of the overt themes of the film, excuse me, is the exploration of the Vietnam conundrum, the idea of this technologically superior army being defeated by a technologically inferior army. And if you actually look at the design of the colonial marines and the way they talk, everything about them just makes you think Vietnam. That's, you know, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about Vietnam. These are like the soldiers going in from America thinking that they were going to defeat everything in their path, and then they were presented by this unyielding adaptive enemy that may not have had the same technology, but were able to adapt to their environment and in the end triumph. And I think that's, clearly in this film. It's clearly in this film. I wouldn't say that James Cameron in some of his interviews doesn't come across as anti, the Vietnam conflict or anything like that. I may be wrong. I don't know what he said about that, but you get the feeling that he is sort of like pro gun ownership and stuff like that. Again, I'm not sure, but you get that feeling, despite that, he is sort of shown that this supposedly technologically inept group, these aliens, or xenomorphs as they're called in Aliens, are capable of defeating someone that is supposedly superior to them. You really have the extension of the idea of corporations as dangerous entities within Aliens as well. When we look at the first film, that idea is put forward by the way that someone within the crew in Alien has been given instructions to basically see the crew as expendable, and that the whole thing's been orchestrated by the company to try and bring back some sort of alien technology. And we see this in Aliens as well. There seems to have been a whole cover up. They have no records about sending Ripley's previous ship to investigate LV-426 or anything like that. And then we also have the whole idea of Burke. Now Burke is this pivotal character in the film, because he really, just like Ash gave the company a face in Alien, Burke gives the company a face in Aliens. And we have this character who seems to be really kind and considerate and all that, but then we sort of realise he's a coward, and that he's also he also knew about the stuff that was going on the planet, and he allowed the colonists to be in that sort of situation. You kind of feel as if just to see what happens. So the idea of corporations being untrustworthy and exploiting people is there for all to see, and it's developed, and it's a key part of the film Aliens, even more so than the original. One of the biggest differences between Alien and Aliens is in how they treat the idea of technology. In Alien, we see technology as something that is overtly dangerous, something that will harm mankind and possibly even in the end result in mankind's destruction. When we see the Ash character, who is an android, in the first film, we see how he attacks the crew, and we see how he tries to withhold information, and it seems as if he's very altruistic in the beginning of the film, but then we actually see his true motives. And but further than that, if we look at the way that technology is portrayed, it's very much a used universe in Alien. The technology is very much cobbled together. It looks stagnant, diseased. It looks like it's something that is unhealthy, and that's a portrayal of technology that we see throughout the original film. In Aliens, however, what we have is we have a much more positive view of technology. When we are presented with the Earth station, or the station orbiting Earth that Ripley is staying in, we see that everything is very, very clean. It's quite sterile in a lot of ways, I suppose, but it's the antithesis of the diseased aspect of technology in the first film. And the parallels, rather the contrasts, most of all take place between Bishop and Ash. Bishop very much is a positive figure within Aliens, although they tried to, they tried to sort of pull the wool over the eyes of the audience initially, because the way Lance Henriksen plays the character, he's very vacant. He's very he has this really sort of softly spoken way which is a little bit creepy, and we don't really know what he's thinking, and because of that we fear him slightly in the beginning of the film. However, in many ways Bishop is one of the most human characters in the story. He's the one who is willing to risk himself for the others. He's also a pacifist. Yes, it's due to programming, but he is a pacifist, and he will do everything he can to protect those around him. So that's two very different ideas about what technology is and how it can affect people, and I think we can probably see that Ridley Scott, who directed the first film, if we look at Blade Runner as well, his opinion of technology is probably that it can be a dangerous thing in the wrong hands, and that ethically there can be a lot of problems with technology. James Cameron, although he created Terminator, which is about technology becoming sentient and turning on its creators, Aliens seems to be far more of a sort of positive view of technology. But at the same time, what we previously talked about, he does show that technology isn't the be all and end all of everything, because we have these colonial marines with all their technology who cannot defeat a technologically inferior enemy. I think there is a lot to be said about the interesting relationships that men and women have in this film. There's a really interesting relationship between Drake, who's one of the Marines, and Vasquez. They seem like sort of best buddies, but you also get the feeling that there's maybe more to it than that. And it's interesting that their relationship very much is defined by what you perceive as a masculinity, but really just a strength that any sort of gender can have. And if we look at the relationship between Ripley and Hicks, it's the same thing. Ripley very much actually becomes the dominant one of that, what we assume is going to be a relationship, and that leads us on to the whole thing that I talked about in the Alien 3 video. I know I did this in a weird order, which is that Aliens is very much about family. It's very much about a woman trying to regain her family, and it's about how people do try to substitute things in their lives. If you lose someone in your life, you don't try to, I suppose, replace them, but you do sort of kind of substitute in a way. You end up filling a void that's in your life with something or someone else. And when we realise that Ripley doesn't have a family, she takes Newt under her wing. She protects Newt. She very much becomes Newt's mother, because Newt has lost a mother. Ripley has lost a daughter, and Hicks very much becomes the father figure within that family. In fact, there's a shot which, if you watch the DVD box set, Carrie Henn, who played Newt, states that there's a shot within the Medilabs just after the facehugger scene where you see the three of them together, and it's very much, there's your family shot, that's what they're going to be. And that is essentially what the film is about. It's about loneliness. It's about trying to fill that loneliness with something else. And in Ripley's case, we have the loneliness of space when the film begins with her in hypersleep, alone, going through space, and the bleakness of it all. And in the end, we see her, the final shot of the film is Ripley and the others, Newt, lying in hypersleep chambers. She's together with a family, and I suppose you could say that the Bishop character really is going to be like some sort of surrogate uncle type character, and that is it's a really nice bookend to the story. There are a couple of versions of this story, of this film rather, and there's, I remember when it came out, not when Aliens original. Well, I do remember when Aliens came out, but I remember when the special edition came out, and it was a big thing. You got it on VHS, and it was the first time that I'd really been presented with a different cut of a film, which actually added a whole lot more to the film, and I think it was something like 22 minutes of restored footage, something like that. And the special edition, funnily enough, now is no longer really seen as the special edition. When it's shown on television, it's just called Aliens, but when you watch it, you realise it is the special edition. And that's because James Cameron sort of, I think, looks on the special edition as the definitive version of the film. In the special edition, we get to see what's happening on the colony LV-426. We get to see how the alien ends up back at the colony. There's a really cool scene with the automated guns where actually Cameron tries to tie the Alien universe into the Terminator universe by mentioning Hyperdyne Systems, which is the company which developed Skynet and the Terminator franchise, which is quite interesting. So I suppose you could say that canon would dictate that they're all part of the one universe, which is a bit of a leap, but I think it was a nice little nod that Cameron made to his own franchise. The theatrical version is still excellent, but I have to say, whenever I go and watch the film, I watch the special edition because I think it adds a lot to it. There are things that I would probably like to have seen. Apparently there was a scene shot where Burke sort of redeems himself in a way. One of the explosions that we see going off towards the end of the film apparently is brought about by Burke letting off one of the grenades to sort of, I think, divert the Queen Alien or something like that. It would have been nice to have seen that shot. However, I understand why they cut it out, because there is another scene where Vasquez and Gorman are holding the grenade and they both die that way, and at the end of the day, if you have that and then have another character doing the same thing, probably just a bit too similar, probably lose its impact. But all in all, I would definitely recommend checking out the special edition over the theatrical. I think it is a better film. I've really prattled on once again, but I do apologise. But really, in the end, all I can say is that I absolutely love this film. It's got a really special place in my heart. When I was a kid growing up, Aliens was it. I watched Aliens first. I watched it first. Alien was something that I watched Aliens. I was a big fan of it, and all of a sudden someone said there is a prequel, and even though it talked about the story, this is great about Aliens, is it actually works as a standalone story. There's a lot of mystery about what happened originally, and when I heard that there was a different that there was an original film, I was blown away by that. I checked it out, and I didn't like Alien as much as I liked Aliens when I was a kid, because Aliens was so exciting, and as a kid Alien was scary, but it was very slow paced in a lot of places. I think time has shown that Alien, it's difficult to compare the two. I love Aliens, I really love it, right? I queued all day to go to this thing called Alien War in Glasgow. It was then moved to London years later, where it was actually, you were taken through like an alien infested spaceship, and they had actors playing Marines and playing aliens, and it was really frightening. It was brilliantly done. I queued all day for the opening day of that, and so I was a massive fan. But I think time has shown that Alien is the best film out of the two. I think Aliens is still one of the best sequels ever made, but Alien, I think, is a masterpiece. It's a work of art. I think it goes beyond the genre. I think Aliens is really just a amazingly entertaining action science fiction film. I say just, it is still a brilliant movie, but while I don't think it ever could have lived up to the original film, I think James Cameron was really smart in taking it in a very different direction. So maybe it's unfair in comparing them because of that. But I love Aliens. I can't really say any more than that, you know. So we're going to move on now. We've done Alien 3, so go and check that out if you haven't already. And we're going to be doing Alien Resurrection, and then maybe Alien vs Predator films, possibly, if I can bring myself to review them. So why don't you come over to the forums down there, and just chat away to us what you think about the films and stuff like that. And you know, what do you guys think? You know, what do you guys think of Aliens? And there's probably loads of stuff I missed out, but it's very late and I'm very tired. So if you did make it this long, thank you very much. Bye.